Amat merat ike tesolderat ikmerut.
Hey all, Dave here. Thanks for tuning into another one of my videos. If you follow my channel in any way or looked at my back catalog at all, you'll see that I have responded to lots of questions for atheist style videos and blog posts. One of the things I'm always talking about is how I'm going to go back to some of the questions, and this video is sort of something like that. As you can probably tell from the title, I'm going to be exploring the question of whether I hope God exists. This is one that I've seen on a few of those questions for atheists lists, and I have also just had it asked in discussion on social media and other places. So, do I hope God exists? So first, I find this question to be something of a weird one and a little difficult to answer. And by that, I don't mean that I don't know how to answer it, but it's one without a simple answer. It's also the kind of question that needs to be put in the context of the questioner. When a Christian asks this, it is meaning something slightly different to when a Muslim asks this question. Both groups could be using the exact same words, but they are asking a slightly different question. One will be asking if you hope that Christianity is true and that the Christian God exists. And the other is asking if you hope that Islam is true and that Allah exists. So this is what I mean by the question being a bit weird and difficult to answer. The same question using the same words can mean multiple things, which means that there's no simple answer to be given. There are answers to the question, rather than an answer to the question, which is kind of how I'm going to go forward with this video. Like I've said in many of the questions for atheist response videos, there are some questions that just have much bigger answers than that video format kind of allows for. Hence my making this kind of video. It allows me to explore those questions with much bigger and more complicated answers, and explore the nuance of the question and the answers. So please bear with me here while I approach the question from various angles. I'll start with answering it from the view that it's being asked by a particular theist, and then move on to a more general sense, and then explore some other ideas that I have. Usually when I get asked if I hope God exists, it comes from Christians. Most often it comes as a question on a list of questions for atheists, or in a questions for atheists video. Though I have had it asked on places like Twitter or Facebook, and on the rare occasion in real life, which is why I think I'll start with answering it from the perspective that a Christian is asking it first. It's simply the demographic that I experience it most from. So do I hope the Christian God exists? It sounds like it should be a pretty simple and clear-cut answer. As an atheist, my answer here should be no, shouldn't it? After all, if the Christian God exists, then I'm destined for eternal conscious torment, at least according to some Christian. According to some other Christians, I'm simply destined for an eternity of separation from God in the afterlife. Although according to some other Christians, I'm simply destined for annihilation. Though saying that, there are also some Christians who argue that I'm destined for none of the aforementioned destinations. My actual destination is an undefined spell in purgatory while I'm punished for my sins, and then I will be united with God. One of the amusing things I find in all this is that each of these factions don't want the God of the other factions to exist. Those that believe in eternal conscious torment think that is the only just option, and a God that does not torture their outgroup eternally is no God of theirs. Those that believe in universalism also believe that no just and loving God would torture a human eternally for very finite transgressions, and that a God that would do this is no God of theirs. Meaning that, to some degree, there are versions of the Christian God that even Christians do not want to exist. What about me, though? Well, I clearly wouldn't want the god of the torture-hungry evangelicals to exist. That whole fire and brimstone thing does nothing for me. I wouldn't want to see even my worst enemies tortured forever. And I most definitely would not want to see someone I consider a good person to be tortured forever simply for believing differently. That's not something I really consider to be a crime worthy of punishment. But then, I don't think a God described in the way it is by many Christians would want any of that either. That most certainly feels like hateful people creating a hateful God that punishes people for being a part of their outgroup. It's little more than the ultimate, this is what you get for not agreeing with me and not doing what I told you to do. It's certainly not something I would consider the belief of anyone calling themselves kind, loving, and compassionate anyway. What about the whole eternal separation from God thing? Well, this is kind of a weird one for me, mostly because I'm not even sure what this is describing. In what way will I exist in this eternal separation from God? Will I still be me? Will there be others around me, or will I be floating around in an empty void created just for me? If it is the latter, then this still sounds like a form of eternal conscious torment to me. After all, imagine sitting in a room with no sensory experience and just your thoughts to keep you company. Now imagine it for a year. That feels kind of like torture to me. Now imagine that year lasting for an eternity. Yep, that sounds like eternal conscious torment to me. So I can't really say whether I want this kind of God to exist until I know just what this whole separation from God eternally thing entails. What can be said is that I certainly wouldn't want the eternal conscious torture version of it to be true, and I certainly wouldn't want that God to exist. The annihilationist God, on the other hand, is somewhat interesting. After all, as a naturalist, this is kind of what I believe anyway. Death brings annihilation, and that we simply cease to be, meaning that this God describes what I think is going to happen to me anyway, and it's something I've already kind of come to peace with. I don't want it to happen now, obviously. There is still quite a lot I want to do, but if this is my final destination, then so be it. And I'd be happy with this God existing, and would definitely prefer this God over the two I just mentioned. However, their question is about hoping God exists, and I hope that if the Christian God does exist, then it is the final of these. The Universalist God, the one that brings all back to its fold eventually. Even if it does mete out some kind of punishment for the individual's transgressions first. Though there are some things to say about this kind of punishment first, at least where my hope is concerned anyway. It's pretty undeniable that in my worldview there are plenty of bad people that do plenty of bad things and get away with it. Rapists, child molesters, serial killers, corrupt officials, and more get away with never being caught and never being punished. Whereas if a god does exist and punishes people for their wrongdoings after they die, then nobody gets away with anything. Justice will be served then, even if not now. Question here is, do I hope this happened? Well, I'm not sure I go so far as to say that I hope that happens. It's certainly a nice thought, and it would certainly be good if people didn't get away with these things. However, I'm not sure what good punishment after death would do. Those people that did those things would not get away with their misdeeds, but I'm not really sure what good that does except to serve some sense of satisfaction and some sense of retribution. Is that what justice is, though? A sense of satisfaction and retribution from seeing those we would consider bad get punished? Is justice nothing more than something like beauty or disgust? It seems to me that it's not. There is more to it than that. So this is why I don't hope for a system like this, but instead hope for a better system here in this world. A system where those who commit grievances are given the chance for rehabilitation and injustices are addressed and rebalanced. If this spell in purgatory before being brought into the fold with God is rehabilitation and the rebalancing of injustices, and done with understanding and compassion, then sure, I hope this happens after death. I may even be able to stretch to the idea of hoping that this God exists. However, I would rather it happened here on Earth. Another thing that gives me pause to hope for this God and hoping for this after-death justice is exactly who and what will be punished. Something I'm often told is that people who fail to believe in God will be punished, or more specifically, fail to believe in the Christian God and also fail to believe that Jesus is our Savior will be punished. Or is it fail to believe in the Islamic God and fail to believe that Muhammad is the final prophet and messenger? Oh no, wait, it's both? Atheists, agnostics, pagans, Wiccans, and all manner of other religious people are going to be punished for not accepting Jesus, or not accepting Muhammad. But also, Christians are going to be punished for failing to accept Muhammad. And also, Muslims are going to be punished for failing to accept Jesus. Christians tell me that there is more than enough evidence to show that Christianity is the one true religion, and all other religions, including Islam, are false. Yet, Muslims tell me that there is more than enough evidence to show that Islam is the one true religion, and that all other religions, including Christianity, are false. Yet, when it comes to Christianity and Islam, neither religion seems obviously true to me. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The more I've looked into these religions, the more obviously false they become. But I'm kind of digressing here a little. My point is that if it is true that God punishes non-believers, it seems to me that there will be a whole lot of punishing going on for all kinds of people, simply for failing to believe in the right religion and the right version of God. Muslims or Christians, either one of those will be punished, along with, well, just about everybody else. This most certainly isn't something I hope for, and not just because I'm a non-believer. I don't want to see either Christians or Muslims being punished for failing to believe in the right religion, especially when I think about those people who have changed religion from Christianity to Islam, or Islam to Christianity, because they felt God guide them to the right religion. There will probably be Christians and Muslims here that will argue that it's their own fault. They shouldn't have left the correct religion. But it really isn't their fault. After all, they felt the pull of God guiding them. Humans are just kind of like that. We're not perfectly rational beings, and our beliefs are often pulled to and fro for all kinds of reasons. Believers and non-believers alike, we're all prone to errors in our thinking, and we can only do our best with what's presented to us and our brains and minds that are filled with cognitive biases. So no, I don't really wish a God like this existed. This seems to me to be the worst kind of God to want to exist. It's wishing for a God to punish all those who were just being human and not having all the information, and believing what seemed to be true to them, and following their cultures and what was taught to them, especially when this God could save us all from this punishment simply by guiding all of us to the right religion and to the right belief, and showing us all that he exists in one way or another. Of course, Christians and Muslims will argue that God doesn't want to violate our free will, and that God wants us to come to him through faith, and through choosing the right religion. Well, you know what? I'm more than happy for God to violate my free will if it means believing in the right religion and the right God, especially as it means I won't have to suffer the punishment for failing to believe in the right religion through no real fault of my own, and none of the evidence of any of the true religions is determinate enough to be able to figure it out beyond luck. This is definitely not the God I would hope for. The God I would hope for would be one that doesn't punish you simply for being the way that this God created us, and for failing to provide guidance to the right one beyond hoping that you're born in the right culture and in the right religion, and gamble your afterlife away hoping you've picked the right spot on the roulette wheel. Far from it. I think nobody should be hoping that this God exists. Even more so when they argue that people who are generally as good a people as they can be when we consider the flawed minds we have in the societies that we live in deserve to be punished for failing to believe. Of course, I haven't mentioned the rapists, the murderers, the thieves, the child molesters, or anyone like that yet, really. All I've mentioned is good people that fail to believe. So, what are these terrible and evil people? Well, that depends on the punishment, I guess. I mean, if they've been punished here on Earth, and they have done their best to become as good a people as possible, then I'm not sure they are deserving of any more punishment for it. I don't particularly think any justice will be served by punishing them further in an afterlife if they've learned their behavior was wrong and did their best to change it and make up for it. Some may argue that they may not have been adequately punished for it. If their punishment rehabilitates them, and they turn their lives around and try to make amends for what they did, then haven't they been adequately punished and repented for their crimes? No, I do not hope for a God that punishes people like this, and I don't think anyone should. Only a cruel and vindictive person would hope for a God like this. I can somewhat understand victims of some crimes hoping for this kind of God. It may even bring them solace of some kind, but any regular person hoping for a God like this is just a cruel and vindictive person. What are those who never get caught or never get rehabilitated, though? I'm still not sure I would hope for a God that punished them. Especially not a God that punishes them eternally. After all, what good would come of punishing someone eternally? It just sounds cruel. Even more cruel when we consider how our psychologies work, and how our societies and culture and experiences shape us. If a person commits crime because they're mentally ill, then punishing them eternally for things beyond their control seems to me to be the very definition of injustice. Should an avalanche be given consciousness and then tormented eternally for destroying a village when it had no choice in the matter? No, I would not hope for this God, and I'm confused why anybody would hope for this kind of God. Well, unless they are a cruel and vindictive person, of course, like I said. There may be some form of God I could hope for when it comes to something like this, though I'm unsure of what that could be at the moment. It's hard for me to form a coherent picture of what an afterlife justice would be, considering human nature, social structures, and the like. Of course, there may be Christians and Muslims who say here that if I can't form a coherent picture of justice, then how can I say that this model isn't the coherent picture? But even if I can't form the picture of what it should be, I can certainly form a picture of what it ought not to be. Plus, the question is about whether I hope God exists, and I'm speaking about the kind of God I hope exists. And one thing I would hope is that a God could form a much better picture of justice than retribution and punishment. It is all-knowing, all-loving, and perfect after all. Anyway, I've rambled on for long enough now, so I'm gonna wrap it up. I was going to talk about another claim I often see Christians make, that atheists just don't want to be held accountable for their sins or just want to sin, but I think I'm gonna save that for a video of its own. I think I might do a series of videos on these kind of claims. We'll see. But let's get on with wrapping this up. So, do I hope God exists? Well, like I said, I'm actually kind of indifferent to the topic in general. I neither hope God exists or hope God does not exist. At least not in the sense of some generic, there is a creator of the universe and everything in it kind of God. I mean, it would be kind of cool if there was some kind of ultimate being with lots of supernatural abilities. That would mean there was more to the universe than just what we see, and there would be a sense where magic is real. My mind would be kind of blown by that. Of course, that kind of changes when we start filling in more details for this God we're speaking of. I most certainly don't hope that the God of brimstone and fire exists. Lots of Christians might say here that I don't want it to exist because of what will happen to me in the afterlife, and sure, there is that. That's not the only reason, though. I hope that God doesn't exist because it means that there are billions of people currently being tortured who committed no greater crime than not being convinced by the Bible or the Quran, or the people cheerleading this fire and brimstone God. Sure, some of those will be bad people. There will also be lots of people who were generally and genuinely good people, though. People who work to make society better. Work to make life better for strangers and family and friends. People that did those things for no sense of eternal reward or because they are expected to. People that did it out of genuine compassion and care and understanding and, well, goodness. These people are being punished eternally, while those who cheerlead for their eternal torture and wish eternal harms on others are considered the good people, simply because they manage to be convinced that their religion is the correct one, often by no more circumstance than being brought up in that religion. That's not to say that all Christians or Muslims wish this eternal hellfire. Some accept that this is the fate of billions of people, but they don't want it to happen. That's why they spend their time evangelizing or performing dawah and trying to convert people. There are plenty of Christians and Muslims that I have met, though, that have taken great glee in telling me that when I'm screaming in agony eternally, I'll realize my mistake and realize that they were right. Like I said in the video, though, there are some versions of God where, while I'm still sort of indifferent to it, if there is a God, I hope it's roughly similar to that kind of God, including one that might come up with some kind of restorative justice for whatever harms I've committed during my life. I can't tell you what that justice might look like, but I'm pretty sure that this God would be able to figure it all out in a just, kind, and compassionate manner. I'd do my best to do it here on Earth, but I'm not perfect after all. Anyway, that's enough from me. If any Christian or Muslim ever wants to discuss this topic with me, then I'd be more than happy to do so. Drop me a comment on the video, or get hold of me on Twitter, or even come join me on one of my Thursday night live streams. Until the next time, though, I hope life treats you well, and that you treat life well. Take care all. See you soon. Bye.